The 2010s have recently become the most hated decade among Sonic fans. This so-called meta era has become infamous for a number of reasons, but most notably, during this era, the Sonic series took a huge shift when it comes to the characters, the stories, the writing, and even the games themselves. Even though the 2010s included some of the most highly regarded Sonic games, those games also completely changed what made Sonic so special to many people. But if you ask me, I never felt that way. In fact, I've always seen the meta era as one of Sonic's best. 2010 was the first year of this new era for Sonic, and before this, Sega was constantly experimenting with each new Sonic entry, just trying to see if something stuck. It all started with Sonic 06, and you know how that went. Then we had Sonic and the Secret Rings, which was a good game on paper, but it lacked good controls and gameplay. Sonic Unleashed was half of a good game, with gameplay that you would normally expect from a next-gen Sonic game, but the other half of the game featured slow combat with the Werehog, and not many people were fond of that. And then we had Sonic and the Black Knight, the second and final entry in the storybook series after Secret Rings. And while Black Knight may have improved upon what Secret Rings failed at, it wasn't enough. These games may have sold well, but they were not received well. Each of these games had glaring issues that prevented them from reaching their fullest potential. So with no other choice, Sega did the only thing left to do, and that was to just make a Sonic game. Like, a Sonic game with just Sonic. Just a simple, high-speed platformer. And we got that with Sonic Colors. Surprisingly, this game's reception among the fandom is very different from when the game first came out. But I still love the game. This was my favorite Sonic game as a kid. Hell, it was my first Sonic game. And even today, after I've experienced pretty much every other game in the franchise, this is still one of my favorites. I love pretty much everything about this game. The gameplay is great, and while it may not be as exhilarating as Unleashed daytime stages, I think the tweaks made to the controls and level design were for the better. For the first time in a while, we actually had some traditional feeling platforming for Sonic. And say what you will about the level design and how it gets repetitive and how it gets reused in multiple acts, but I never really cared. Sure, it's an issue, and it's understandable why it would be an issue for a lot of people, but for me, the gameplay more than makes up for it. I still have fun playing through every level in this game. With a few exceptions, of course, but you know what I mean. And then there's the Wisps. Okay, maybe we're not completely void of any gimmicks, but considering that these guys are pretty much just power-ups, people weren't caught off guard by them at all. They serve as a supplement to Sonic's controls, giving you new abilities within a short time limit. This is by no means the same thing as having a combat-focused Sonic taking upwards of 50% of the game as it was in Unleashed. And I actually like the Wisps. Sure, you got a few stinkers in there, but for the most part, they're pretty fun. And those new stage environments, man, they're just pure eye candy. To this day, I think Colors still has some of the best level environments we have ever seen in a Sonic game. The music is also fantastic. But then there's the story, which raised a lot of red flags even for Sonic fans back then. This was not the Sonic we were used to seeing at all. Colors' iteration of Sonic is much more goofy and humorous, and with this being the first major game without the 4Kids voice cast, it was weird. Even when I was a kid, I was watching Sonic X reruns every Saturday morning, so I was basically used to the Sonic that everyone else was used to at the time. And to this day, this is the only aspect of Colors that I flat out do not like. But I don't think it ever took away from the game itself. The story takes much more of a backseat in this game, and I think that was for the better. And even though I don't like the story, the gameplay is so fun to the point where I don't even really care that the story is bad. Especially considering that this was part of what Sega needed to do to keep the series alive. And it definitely worked. So let's see what they did next. The next major release launched in 2011, and that was Sonic Generations. And what a release it was. If Colors was the start of the Sonic series revival, Generations cemented it. A pure love letter to the history of the Sonic franchise, combining elements from most of the mainline Sonic games up until that point, even the bad ones. We had levels from several different games. They brought back the classic gameplay that we all knew and loved from the 90s. Okay, well, not entirely, but it's the thought that counts. Today, I feel like people have three main problems with Generations and what it did with the series moving forward. The first problem was that classic Sonic's gameplay was not the classic Sonic from the Genesis games, far from it. I mean, yeah, it's not one-to-one, but I still think that classic Sonic in Generations still serves as a very fun mode of gameplay. It's so much fun just flying over everything by charging the spin dash over and over again. It may feel clunky and stiff at times, but it's still a lot of fun. Modern Sonic's gameplay is even better. It kind of feels like it combines aspects from both Colors and Unleashed to make what I think was the best Sonic had ever controlled, at least at the time. It was a little awkward awkward a platform still, but you got that sense of speed that Unleashed was carried by and that Colors didn't really have. The second problem people have is the nostalgia pandering. For the time, the reuse of levels from Sonic's past was a completely brand new concept, and for the anniversary celebration that Generations was, it worked really well. I know, it sucks that we're still seeing Green Hill and Chemical Plant in Sonic games, and yes, Generations definitely had something to do with that, but in the bubble of Generations, it's perfectly fine. And then there's the story. It takes a lot of the same cues from Sonic Colors, with the writing and the characterization, and yes, I also don't really like Generations' story, but like with Colors, I don't think the story takes away from what makes Generations so special. Like Colors, this game wasn't meant to be some cinematic AAA Sonic game. It was supposed to be a fun celebration of Sonic's past. And if that's really what they were trying to do here, then I think they succeeded. Generations is still one of the highest praised Sonic games, not just because of its fan service, but also because Sonic's gameplay was widely enjoyed among the fandom and critics alike. So why the hell did they change it? Sonic Lost World was released in October of 2013, and it's going to be pretty hard to defend this game, but I'm just going to come right out of the gate and say that I've always liked this game. I don't think it's great by any means, but it's good enough to the point where it's in my top 10 Sonic games easily. This was an interesting case because it was released exclusively on the Wii U and 3DS, as a part of an exclusivity deal with Nintendo. Following the release of Sonic Generations, you would expect them to just, continue with what worked and what people liked with the boost formula, but no, that's not what happened. Instead, Lost World tries something completely different. This game controls completely differently from anything we've seen in a Sonic game. And you know what? I like it. The parkour system is a load of fun to mess around with, and once you get the hang of it, it's really fun to master as well. Yes, I know, it's a bit slow and it has a run button and all of that, but I think it works really well with the level design, which has you running around these spherical planetoids. It also goes for a much more colorful and cartoony art style, which I kinda dig, but I can understand why people don't like it, because the level environments used are very generic. So, if you couldn't already tell, this game was pretty much just trying to draw in Mario fans. It makes sense. It was a Wii U/3DS exclusive for a couple of years, so naturally, they would want to draw in Nintendo fans. But in doing that, it kind of takes away everything that makes Sonic, you know? But I still think when you look at Lost World on its own without taking into account, the bad writing or the uninspired level environments, it's a very fun game when you get the hang of it, and I don't think it gets enough credit. But 2014 to 2016 is where everything really went to shit. In 2014, we had the introduction of the Sonic Boom series that lasted until 2016. It's going to be pretty hard to defend the Sonic Boom series too, because goddamn, it was bad. But it had some redeeming aspects. The first two games, Rise of Lyric and Shattered Crystal, were pretty bad all around, but one thing that I still love about Rise of Lyric is its art direction and character designs. I still think that Sonic Boom has some of, if not the best character designs we've seen in the series. They're just so expressive and cool. The designs reflect each character's personality quite well. And don't sue me, but I think that Blue Arms fits Sonic really well. The set pieces and environments of Rise of Lyric are also breathtaking. It's really difficult to appreciate them on original hardware, but if you play this game on an emulator at a higher resolution, you can see that when it comes to visuals, this game is very impressive. I hope for the next Sonic game, whenever it's coming out, they take some ideas from Rise of Lyric when it comes to the level environments. Seriously. And the writing in this game is actually really good, and the interactions between the characters are great as well. So yes, while Rise of Lyric and Shattered Crystal were pretty bad games, it's hard for me to ignore everything else surrounding them. The TV show is still my favorite Sonic show. The comics were good. Oh, and we actually got a good Sonic Boom game with Fire and Ice. So while this series may have had a bad start, I think it redeemed itself as we got more content. But unfortunately, its reputation was ruined the moment it started. Mind you, this was the only Sonic content we had for a few years, so it's understandable why people were turned away by the first two games. But again, I still think that Sonic Boom had many redeemable aspects. But it all didn't matter because in 2017, Sonic finally found his footing again with Sonic Mania. And do I even need to defend this game? This was basically another Generations with how well it celebrated Sonic's past, and I really have no issues with the game. What I do take issue with is what came after it though. Sonic Forces, the final mainline Sonic game released in the 2010s. And it pains me to say that this was the culmination of everything that made people hate the meta era. Bad story, bad writing, nostalgia pandering, the whole 9 yards. It was all here. It also had boring level design, short levels, and subpar music. Like, what was going on here? But even with all of that, I don't think Forces is a terrible game like many people say it is. Sure, it has all of those issues that I mentioned, and at the time, I can understand why people were upset at this game because it was the complete opposite of what we needed after the failure of Sonic Boom. But looking back, I just can't sit here and act like this is a terrible game when games like 06, Rise of Lyric, and even Heroes exist and do much worse than Forces. Yes, Forces is a basic play-it-safe game, but when I'm playing the game, I'm not actively disliking it, you know? And there are good aspects too. Even though I dislike the writing, I appreciate how there are more character interactions. I also think the avatar system, while flawed, is a cool idea that, if properly executed, could be a lot of fun to mess around with. And Infinite is also not a terrible villain. Sure, he kind of just boils down to a Walmart Mephiles. That doesn't make him bad. Really, the worst I could say about Sonic Forces when it's lined up to other Sonic games is just that it's kind of there. In the grand scheme of things, it didn't really do any harm to the series if you ask me. But after Forces, that was it for Sonic in the 2010s. Sure, we had a couple more spin-offs and whatnot, but Forces was it, and we wouldn't get another mainline Sonic game until 2022. So with that, I think that Sonic's meta era was not nearly as bad as some people made it out to be. While yes, it had its issues that completely disconnected Sonic from what made his character so appealing in the first place, the games themselves were mostly pretty good, with a couple of exceptions. So no, I don't think the meta era as a whole was bad, and I can't act like it did crucial damage to the series when we were finally getting good Sonic games for a little while. But that's all for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.